INFJ, your sensitivity is a superpower, not a flaw. The cost of your empathy comes from outdated survival patterns, not personal failing. You don't need to become harder or quieter. Many INFJs feel mentally older because they have already lived so much of life inside their minds. Chronic future simulation creates a kind of internal fast-forward effect. Research on episodic future thinking shows that imagining the future activates the same default mode network circuits as recalling the past, particularly regions such as the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex. Neurologically, the brain treats vivid simulation almost like lived experience. When you repeatedly project 10 years ahead, rehearse possible conversations, or anticipate emotional outcomes before they occur, you accumulate cognitive mileage without chronological years passing. This sustained future processing is metabolically demanding and contributes to subjective time compression. You feel older not because life has happened, but because your mind has already processed it. Another pathway emerges from early responsibility. Many highly empathetic children experience some degree of parentification, where they take on emotional or practical roles beyond their stage. Research links childhood parentification with elevated cortisol levels and long-term stress dysregulation in adulthood. What appears externally as maturity is often chronic adaptation. When a child learns to regulate adults, soothe siblings, or stabilize chaotic environments, the nervous system shifts into sustained vigilance. The body becomes calibrated for responsibility rather than play. Over time, this conditioning creates a persistent adult mode identity that lingers long after the original circumstances have ended. The result is a felt sense of having grown up too quickly, as if youth was abbreviated rather than completed. Cognitive load further compounds this aging effect. High empathy individuals make an extraordinary number of micro-decisions daily, evaluating tone, predicting impact, editing language, anticipating misunderstandings. Each decision draws on executive function. Ego depletion research suggests that repeated acts of self-control and decision-making reduce subsequent regulatory capacity. Even if later models nuance ego depletion theory, the broader literature on cognitive load confirms that executive resources are finite. When the prefrontal cortex remains constantly engaged in social calculation, mental fatigue accumulates. Over time, decision fatigue resembles aspects of cognitive aging: slower switching, reduced tolerance for ambiguity, and increased error under pressure. The exhaustion feels like age, even when biological age remains unchanged. Loss of play adds another layer. Play is not frivolous, it is neurobiologically restorative. Research in affective neuroscience indicates that play activates dopaminergic reward pathways and supports oxytocin-mediated bonding processes, both of which counteract chronic stress responses. INFJs, however, often prioritize reflection and responsibility over spontaneous enjoyment. When play is consistently deprioritized, stress hormones are not offset by sufficient reward activation. Without those periodic neurochemical resets, baseline stress remains elevated. Chronic stress is strongly associated with markers of accelerated aging at both psychological and physiological levels. The absence of unstructured joy can therefore subtly intensify the sensation of being worn down, as though life has been experienced primarily as duty rather than exploration. Finally, many INFJs inhabit what can be described as an observer identity. They do not merely experience events, they watch themselves experiencing events. This meta-awareness, often linked to interoceptive sensitivity, recruits regions such as the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex. While reflective awareness can enhance insight, excessive self-monitoring fragments attention and sustains internal error detection signals. The brain remains partially in evaluation mode, scanning for missteps or misalignments. Living in this dual-layer consciousness, participating and simultaneously analyzing participation creates continuous cognitive tension. Over time, that tension manifests as mental fatigue and the subjective impression of having carried more than one's chronological years would suggest. Taken together, Chronic future simulation, early role reversal, constant executive decision-making, diminished play, and persistent self-observation form a reinforcing loop. Each mechanism independently taxes neural systems associated with stress regulation and executive control. Combined, they create a life experience with depth and intensity, but also with accumulated cognitive wear. The outcome is not literal aging, but the internal sensation of having traveled farther, thought longer, and carried more than most at the same age. Real growth is integration, knowing when to engage deeply and when to shield yourself. Remember, alignment, not age, is your goal. If this felt precise instead of dramatic, you belong on my off algorithm list. That's where I go deeper without dilution. Youth isn't lost, it's just hidden under layers of care and caution. Start by giving yourself permission to rest. Let others carry their own burdens sometimes. Speak up about small wrongs as practice. Each step eases your nervous system. The goal is to feel your years, not fight them. You've internalized a lifetime of empathy. Now it's time to internalize a little compassion for yourself.